In the darkest depths of the ancient world, something was growing. Not one head, not two, but 9. And every time a blade came down, every time a hero thought he had won, the monster simply became more. More heads, more fury, more impossible to destroy. Warriors had gone into the marshes of Lerna and never come back. Their armor found rusting at the water's edge, their weapons abandoned in the mud. Whatever lived in those swamps did not merely kill its enemies, it multiplied against them. Long before Greece had its marble temples and golden poets, it had its monsters. And those monsters were not random nightmares dreamed up by frightened children. They were deliberate, they were purposeful. They were born from the oldest forces in the cosmos, creatures placed into the world to test whether the gods had made mankind strong enough to deserve survival. The Lernaean Hydra came from that ancient darkness, born of Typhon and Echidna, two of the most terrifying beings in all of Greek mythology. Typhon was the last great enemy of the Olympian gods, a creature so immense and so violent that even Zeus himself trembled before their final battle. Echidna was his mate, the mother of monsters, a woman above the waist and a serpent below, immortal, unchanging, dwelling forever in a cave beneath the earth. Together they produced a family that reads like a catalogue of human fear. Cerberus, the three-headed hound of the underworld, the chimera breathing fire from 3 different mouths, the Nemean lion whose skin no weapon could pierce, and among all of them, perhaps the most diabolical creation of all, a serpent born not to simply destroy, but to make destruction itself impossible to achieve. The gods of Olympus watched the Hydra take up residence in the swamps of Lerna in the northeastern Peloponnese, where it poisoned the waters and the air and the earth itself, and they said nothing. They were waiting for someone worthy enough to face it. Picture the marshes of Lerna at the edge of night. The water is black. The reeds have been scorched to grey stumps. The ground beneath your feet does not feel like ground at all, but something softer, something that breathes. The smell reaches you first, a thick chemical rot, like sulfur mixed with decay, a poison so concentrated it hangs in the air as visible haze. Birds do not fly over this place. Animals do not graze near its edges. The local farmers knew the truth long before the heroes arrived. Nothing comes back from Lerna. At the center of the marsh, coiled around a cave mouth from which a spring once flowed fresh and clear, was the Hydra itself. 9 heads rising on serpentine necks, each one the size of a war horse, each one crowned with black and green scales that caught no light at all. The eyes were pale, almost white, with no visible pupil, the eyes of something that has never needed to see in the way living things see. Its breath alone could kill. Ancient writers described it as a mist that came off its tongues and skin, a venom so potent that a man breathing it would be dead before he realized he was dying. Its blood was poisonous. Its very footprint, wherever it wandered, left the earth barren for generations. And then there was the central horror, the one feature that made it unlike every other monster in the ancient world. Cut off one head, and 2 would grow back in its place. The Hydra did not regenerate despite being wounded. It regenerated because of it. Violence made it stronger. Aggression made it worse. It was a monster designed specifically to defeat the logic of heroism. Hercules was already famous when he came to Lerna. He had already proven himself the strongest man alive. He had wrestled beasts and carried mountains and bent rivers with his bare hands. But this was different. This was his second labor, assigned by King Eurystheus of Tiryns, the labor designed specifically to kill him. Eurystheus knew what the Hydra was. He knew its nature. He sent Hercules there expecting a corpse to come floating out of the marsh. Hercules arrived with his nephew Iolaus at his side, driving a chariot to the edge of the swamp where the air itself tasted wrong. He wrapped cloth around his mouth and nose, drew his great bronze sword, and advanced alone into the water. He found the Hydra quickly. It found him first. The 9 heads rose from the black water like nightmare flowers blooming all at once, each one hissing in a different register, a sound like 100 arrows cutting the air simultaneously. Hercules did what heroes do. He swung. The first head fell. 2 grew back before the neck had stopped bleeding. He swung again, and again. Each stroke of his blade that would have ended any other fight was instead rearranging this one, multiplying the enemy before his eyes, turning one manageable monster into something that was becoming uncountable. And Hera, who hated Hercules with a fury that stretched across all of heaven, sent a giant crab to attack his feet while he fought, hoping to pin him, to tip the balance just enough to let the Hydra finish what she had started. The crab was crushed beneath Hercules' heel in a single brutal moment. But the Hydra was not so easily solved. He was surrounded now, not by 9 heads, but by something approaching 20. The swamp water around him was dark with his own blood and the blood of the creature, and the blood of the creature was poison, and he could feel it burning through the bronze of his armor. He called to Iolaus. The plan that followed was not glorious in the way myths usually describe glory. It was desperate. Iolaus took a burning torch and moved to the edge of the battle. Every time Hercules severed a head, Iolaus drove the flame into the open wound before the flesh could split and regenerate. Fire cauterized what the blade had opened. 1 head seared shut. Another seared shut. The Hydra screamed in a register that had no comparison in the natural world. Not animal, not human, something older than both. A sound that the ancient Greeks believed could be heard echoing in the underworld itself. The heads were falling and not returning now. The monster thrashed, its necks whipping blindly, its pale eyes finally showing something they had never shown before. Confusion. And then there was 1 head left, the central head, the immortal one, the one that could not be killed by any weapon or any fire or any force in the physical world. Hercules raised his sword and brought it down with everything he had. The immortal head could not be killed, so Hercules buried it. He rolled a great boulder over the severed head and left it there beneath the earth, still alive, still hissing in the darkness beneath the stone, condemned to immortality in the worst possible form, isolated, severed, aware. He dipped his arrows in the Hydra's blood before he left the marsh. This was a decision that would echo through his entire life and beyond it. Those arrows, touched with the blood of the undying serpent, carried a poison no medicine could counter and no prayer could reverse. They would eventually kill the centaur Nessus, and through Nessus, through a cloak soaked in poisoned blood given to Hercules' wife in what she believed was an act of love, those same arrows would eventually circle back and destroy Hercules himself. The curse of the Hydra did not end in the swamp. It traveled. King Eurystheus refused to count the labor. He declared that because Iolaus had helped, the victory was not Hercules' alone. He added extra labors to the count, determined to deny him the redemption he was owed. Lerna itself never fully recovered. Ancient writers recorded that the region around the spring remained barren for centuries, the water permanently tainted, the earth unwilling to grow. The goddess Hera, furious at the Hydra's defeat, placed the crab that had fought in the marsh among the stars as the constellation Cancer, a small immortality for a creature that had fought and lost in service of her hatred. We never stopped telling this story because we never stopped living inside it. Every generation finds its own Hydra, the problem that multiplies when you attack it directly, the enemy that gets worse the harder you fight it conventionally, the challenge that demands not just strength, but a complete reimagining of strategy. The myth appears in the Marvel universe, in the name of the shadow organization that Hercules himself would have recognized instantly, an enemy that cannot be killed because cutting off its leadership only produces more. It appears in every fantasy saga, every monster hunting story, every tale where brute force alone proves insufficient. Artists from Renaissance painters to modern illustrators have returned to that image obsessively, the lone figure surrounded by regenerating heads, because it speaks to something terrifyingly universal. The ancient Greeks were not describing a swamp creature. They were describing the nature of certain problems. They were telling us, 3,000 years in advance, that intelligence must accompany strength, that some battles require you to change your weapons entirely, and that even a monster designed to be unbeatable can be defeated if you are willing to think while the heads are still falling around you. Somewhere beneath the earth near ancient Lerna, if the myth is to be believed, one immortal head is still breathing, still hissing, still conscious in the dark, beneath a stone that no one has moved in 3,000 years. If this story gave you chills, subscribe. We bring ancient myths to life every day.